and welcome to this episode of Season 5 of the Dr. Tech Show, where myself, Pauline Roche, and Sweyn Hunter, and often guests, as we have today, talk about digital topics, including the world of online communications and digital inclusion, in a show which was the brainchild of digital storyteller, the late and much missed John Popham, and we send New Year's greetings to his family in Huddersfield. Sweyn, good morning. How are you, and how has the weather been this week where you are?
Good afternoon, Pauline, as it's noon. There we are. Ha ha. Weather. Let's not talk about the weather this week. It's been stormy and blustery, but for once, Orkney has not been where I am, has not been the place where it's been worst. So yeah, it's all calmed down, the weather. It's all looking a bit more normal.
That's good to hear. And Liz Crew from TechResort, how are you? Where are you? And how's the weather been this week where you are?
Hiya, today I'm in Bristol, which is where I'm from originally. We've had rain, we've had wind, we've had everything, but today I think there's a thing called a blue sky. So fingers crossed for later.
Good to hear it. And Will Callaghan, also TechResort, where are you? And how's the weather where you are?
Hi, Pauline. So I'm just looking out the window of Eastbourne. I can see the South Downs, and it is sort of bright, cold. We've had the whole gamut over the weekend, though, very stormy. And so we've just seen Amazon left a parcel outside my door for 3 days that we've just found is very soggy.
Oh, wow.
So I might be sending a stiff letter to them after the show.
Absolutely. Well, here in Birmingham, we have the sun trying to break through, but plenty of cloud in the sky. I was asked yesterday, was it windy? And I said no. And then I looked out and I saw the tree blowing. So yes, it was windy. So it's been very windy here and rainy, but I have managed to get out most days because I'm on a movement challenge and I'm adding to the kilometers one by one. Everybody else is doing 10s and 20s, but I'm doing one by one. But yeah, it's not been too bad. And but in Ireland, as you'll know, the weather's been terrible. My mum's been really batten down the hatches, but hopefully more power and water is coming back to most of the country as we speak. So fingers crossed for that and less effects of storms, hopefully. Okay, so welcome to the show, both of you. We will talk to you at length about all the things that we like to talk about. But first of all, we'll go through some dates and events. Sweyn, do you want to take it away with the first one?
Sure. There's only one date that I have this week, and that is Holocaust Memorial Day, which is, in fact, today. And this is a solemn and significant day of remembrance, observed to honour the millions of people who suffered and died during the Holocaust. As well as persecuting and murdering 6 million Jews, the Nazis targeted many other groups for extermination: Roma Sinti people, black people, disabled people, Freemasons, gay people, Jehovah's Witnesses, Catholics, Polish and Slavic civilians and prisoners of war, political opponents, including trade unionists, and any in society deemed to be asocial, as so-called, such as beggars, alcoholics, sex workers, and pacifists. Holocaust Memorial Day also commemorates subsequent genocides and acts of mass violence, and serves as a stark reminder of the horrors of the past and emphasizes the importance of preventing such atrocities in the future. The day is observed every year on the 27th of January, which is today, and this date was chosen because it marks the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau, the largest Nazi concentration and death camp, by Soviet forces in 1945, and that's 80 years ago this year. Another thing, bringing this kind of into the online stuff that we tend to do here, there's a Facebook page which is run by the Auschwitz Memorial and Museum in Poland. They have other social media channels as well, but this provides lots of information, pretty much daily, about the history of the site, the brutality and the horror there, and it also commemorates every single day an individual or one or more individual victims on their birthdays by giving a little bit of detail about their lives, and just the whole rolling output of the Memorial Museum is a grim reminder of the scale of the suffering perpetrated by the Nazis, and also of how each victim was an individual with a story and with individual humanity. So that's just one date this week.
Thanks, Sweyn. That's very important, and I know we both know how stories were so important to the work that John Popham did and brought to kind of people's attention. So telling stories of all sorts, kind of hopeful and sad, was key to the work that he did. So thanks for sharing that with us. Very important work, especially these times. Okay, some events that we've picked up as well are happening, and one of them is happening today, starting this evening. It's a series of events. Let's talk about digital media literacy. And this is at an Exeter library. We love libraries on this show, so it's great to see the library's doing another great thing. This is aimed at tackling misinformation and information overload in the digital world. It's not news to anyone. The blurb says that the digital landscape is chock full of bad actors vying for your attention. It's no secret the internet is rife with misinformation, but it doesn't mean you can't learn to identify which sources are reliable. And of course, we know libraries and library staff are great places to learn where there's reliable and reliable information, not fake news. So this series of seminars available to attend both in person and online. The library staff are going to provide people with useful tools to evaluate the reliability of what you read online, as well as give you the tools to learn literally anything on the web. So this evening's session is discussion of what digital literacy is and how it affects the ways in which we consume and digest information. That's the what, why, and how of digital media literacy. And the session will illuminate the way in which the human mind responds to information, approaching digital media consumption from a cognitive framework. The next session is on the 10th of February, which will be a hands-on practical explanation of how to trace sources online in order to discern if what you're reading is credible. There'll be a discussion of the different types of sources we see online and dissect forums and articles to distinguish fact from fiction. And the third session on the 24th of February will go beyond mere fact-checking and explore the cornucopia of information and literature available on the internet for free. The staff will reveal that scholarly research and academic literature can be freely accessible for all and is often not hidden behind a paywall if you know where to look. So that sounds like something that I'd love to do. If it's available online, then obviously it's open to more people than just face to face. So well done to Exeter Library for offering that, and we wish them well with it. The next event is tomorrow, Tuesday, 2 to 5 p.m., empowering communities via digital and financial inclusion. And we know that digital and financial inclusion are very closely aligned in the work that we all do. So this is an event where they're going to dive into the world of digital and financial inclusion in Plaistow, a day filled with insightful discussions, workshops, and networking opportunities. The blurb says, learn how technology and financial services can empower communities and drive positive change. So good luck to the people attending that one. On Thursday is our third of 4 events. Thursday is the Tech for Good Scotland January event at BJSS in West George Street in Glasgow. And they're having 2 speakers. The first one, the title of the title of the talk they're giving is called Open Up, Build Trust and Impact Through Transparent Communication. And the blurb says, in a world where trust and collaboration are key, open working is your secret weapon. Whether you're a leader, a team member, or a change maker, working in the open helps you connect meaningfully with funders, colleagues, and communities. Join Robin Barclay, Communication, Content, and Marketing Executive at Third Sector Lab for a practical session based on their highly rated 8-week open working program. And the second talk by Manish Joshi is called Innovating for Impact, Bridging Universities, Tech and Social Good. And this talk will explore how universities, technology and social impact can come together to create real, tangible change in our communities. It will highlight the role of universities in fostering innovation, the potential of tech to solve big problems, and the power of collaboration to make a difference. And the last event is also on Thursday, 1:30 to 5 p.m. The headline is DAISI Partnership Hive in-person event, and this is DAISI Digital Accessibility, Inclusion, Support and Innovation Partnership Hive, an event, an afternoon of buzz talks, networking, and an opportunity to affect change for communities across Gloucestershire and collaborate with national DAISI partners. The workshops have been informed by a previous event held in November 2024, and the topics are cybersecurity for organizations, AI, demystifying data, and low-tech solutions to digital barriers. So that's for people in Gloucestershire, and we hope that one goes well as well. And so we brings us to our special guests for today. Welcome to Will Callaghan and Liz Crew from TechResort. Will has worked in the digital industry for 25 years, developing product and services for clients, including Time Warner, Haymarket, and 3 UK government departments. He was part of the team that launched gov.uk, and now leads the open source local gov Drupal project used by councils across the UK and Ireland. Will is a Scrum Master, Scrum Project Owner, and RSA Fellow. And Liz, after 27 years in financial services, Liz changed scenery and moved to Eastbourne from Bristol. Following a chance meeting, she mustered her inner geek to help establish TechResort's first digital making space. And these days, for her, Liz, it's less geeking and more finance and funding. So Liz and Will, very welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, nice to be here.
It's great to be here.
So, Liz, how long have you been working with Will, and is it a good relationship? What's the skinny on that?
Oh, I remember meeting Will well over 10 years ago now, probably about 2010 or 11, I think, in a cafe in Eastbourne, talking about something completely different. It was about a local heritage thing that Will was interested in saving. We've saved that too, by the way.
Well done.
And then not long after that, he talked about how TechResort had just recently formed. So it formally formed in 2013, Will, I think.
Yeah, we're over 10 years old, 12, 13 years old now.
Yeah. So it was a group of interested people, mostly business, talking about the dearth of digital skills in the town and the dearth of opportunities for young people to do digital, have digital careers, I guess. And everybody's going to Brighton, or if they're a bit more ambitious, they'll go to London. And so Eastbourne doesn't have lots of young people working in tech industries, which is really sad.
Although it's changing, though, which we can talk about.
It's starting to change. So it was all that long ago. And then, I don't know, I think he caught me in a weak moment and persuaded me to be a director and said, you know, that community bossing about you do, could you come and do some here? And that was it. That sold it for me. He may have also bought me a pint. I don't know.
Oh, community bossing about. What was all that about then? So you have a history yourself in this area, a bit,
yeah,
or you,
little bit.
Yeah. Okay. We hear more about that maybe.
Call it assertive, but yeah, quite healthy.
Good. And Will, how TechResort? I've kind of seen it on the web through my librarianship and journalism skills over the years. Great name, by the way. I always thought it was something in Florida or something like that, but I think it's appealing. What's your history with it and your history generally in doing this kind of work?
I think I got into tech for good stuff because I worked at Go On UK for a short time. So Martha's sort of charity, Martha Lane Fox's charity, and it just in that job it just became really apparent that just so many people were just sort of cast adrift really and not able to sort of get the benefits of online. So there were a couple of sort of projects. We went up to Newcastle. I presented to some high level people who were involved. There were a lot of sort of really big names involved in that project. And I guess I just got a bit of a taste for it. And then went off and did something completely different. And then my family moved to Eastbourne. And you kind of think, you think, oh, these challenges were all sorted then, and they totally weren't. And they're still an issue now, sort of, you know, in the sort of 10, 12 years that we've been doing this. So I guess TechResort we were doing other, as Liz says, we were doing other community things at the time. But I thought, what am I uniquely placed to do? What things do I have that I could give? And I've worked in the digital industry for a long time. So I thought, well, okay, I'm now officially past it. I think I ought to start giving something back to recognise all the good things that have happened to me and my family in this industry. And Liz and I got talking about it, and I think I talked her into it. And I mean, we're very yin and yang, Liz and I, and we'll probably talk about this. So I kind of go, oh, what might the next thing be? Or what about this highfalutin thing? And basically Liz does it all. Don't you, Liz?
Well, not quite true. I marshal the troops. We have people. We have people now.
But in the beginning, Liz did it all. And I went, oh, yes, maybe what about this thing?
I think our attitude to project management is also very different. I'm a formal project manager. I was Prince 2 trained. I'm not saying Prince 2 is amazing, but I was trained that way. And Will is much more agile and
hand wavy.
A bit hand wavy, but that comes from the architecture. But when we get together and organise something, actually I think we bring the best of those things. So my rigidity at times gets kind of pushed down a little bit, and Will's hand waving just gets reined in a little bit.
Yeah. I
That's a
think the
good way to
battle lines are
describe it.
drawn on Trello as well, aren't they? I love Trello. You don't love Trello
No, I'm
as
not.
much.
No, I'm a convert. I'm a Trello convert now.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
okay,
It's like,
excellent.
Okay. I remember bringing Trello to an on-conference for voluntary sector organizations many years ago now in London, and they were just blown away by it. They could not believe what a marvelous thing this was. And they've kind of um, become more sophisticated now and kind of come to be very blasé about some of the tools that you bring along. But it was great in the early days when you could show them something that like other people took for granted or other people were well used to, and they just thought was wonderful. It was those heady days. Speaking of on conferences, the last time you guys and I met was at charity camp in Birmingham. And we had some very good discussions there. Do you want to reprise a few of the things we talked about there, Will or Liz?
Well, we met the previous year as well. That's where we met
We did.
originally, which was
Mm-hmm.
brilliant. And I think we're going to keep going to Charity Campus Tech Resort because it's such a nice sort of meeting of similar minds but completely different organisations, different size, different scale, different types of work. And maybe you can put a link in the notes or something to Charity Camp because it's
Sure.
brilliant for people to sort of, oh, here we might get a screen share with it on. Here we
Yes.
go.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Mm.
So I think the reason, I mean, I've got different hats, but I always go as Tech Resort because it's that it's not a charity. We're a community interest company,
Mm-hmm.
but we've got sort of good aims.
Mm.
And we went this year with pretty much a digital inclusion hat on because that's largely, although we work on digital skills, so education for young people, there's less and less money for that, which is such a shame. So we talk about it still, but our focus is much more digital inclusion based now. And I pitched, I think we pitched a couple of sessions, and one of them was writing a letter to Peter Kyle, which is quite well advanced, which we
Mm-hmm.
could talk about.
Yeah.
And it just,
Oh, we've lost you.
He's gone.
No.
Can you
There he
hear me
goes.
all right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry about that. Just sort of, I think I got overexcited. So writing a letter to Peter Kyle, which we can talk more about, and just generally meeting people who are into this. And we had a good session, Pauline, didn't we, with a lot of people about that subject.
Yeah, including several people who, I mean, Harry was on the show actually before Christmas, just to kind of tie up that link. And Ariel, who came to the show had session, has been at the show on the show previously as well. So it's kind of all the people who are in this kind of ecosystem. But yeah, there was a lot of interesting people there, who were as passionate, I think, about the subject of digital inclusion as we all are. And I think it was very useful to have a practical thing to do to move things forward, because often on conferences you have great sessions but it doesn't juice anything, and this was a very practical thing to do, so I really thought that was a great idea. So yeah, please tell us what ideas came out of it and where things are at this moment.
Well, I mean, basically, we think we'll have something to publish in the next, I think it's like middle of February. There are many ideas of how we might do this. And also what we didn't want to do, so we're thinking about afterwards, we didn't just want to add another list to all the other lists that people have made. So sort of looking around, there are sort of manifestos by Good Things, by the Digital Poverty Alliance. I saw something by Careful Trouble the other day. So what we want to do, so it'll get published on something called the Digital Inclusion Toolkit, which is a project that Liz and I run along with 100% Digital Leads. So
Familiar
it'll
with
be
that,
written
yeah.
up there, and we'll basically say, here's all the stuff that people have asked for,
Yeah.
as a reminder, and here's some extra special things that we worked on at Charity Camp. So it's like one list of asks, and then we can say, here you go, Minister, and see see what he says, basically.
What's your sense of where Peter Kyle is at the moment, what he's been doing and what's happening?
He's quite local to us in Eastbourne. He's in Hove.
All
So
right, handy.
we've been trying to find different ways to get him to come along the coast and have an ice cream here, because obviously ice cream is better here than Hove. And we haven't quite managed, although our MP's new, he's lovely, and he's kind of asked a question in the House to the Minister and so on. So I guess we'll see. We also met with the DSIT, the Science and Innovation Technology team, because they actually have a team for digital inclusion now, and
So
they
we understand,
haven't.
yes.
They've never. So in previous parliaments, we've been looking for people to talk to, and there's never really been anyone.
Yeah.
So the fact that Liz, I mean, I'm talking a lot, Liz, so please come in.
Yeah,
But I think there were 20. There are 20 people in that team now, and we met with them. We had a really nice chat with them. They were very interested in what grassroots organisations like TechResort do, because we're a big, Pauline, your work, and we're a big part of the puzzle here, like actual direct connections with people who need help.
Yeah.
So they're very interested in that. They said, like, tell us, in aggregate, like anonymously, about the contacts that you make with people, how you help them. They were super interested in that. So we supplied some of that information. What else did we do, Liz? I mean, we gave them a bit of a data pack, didn't we, that they took away? And
yeah, we proceed how we work. It's not the right thing for everybody, but it happens to work for us. A lot of digital inclusion happens with third sector organisations where their focus is something else. So you might do things with older people, or you might do people with people who have addiction issues and stuff like that. And those organisations may try and do a bit of digital inclusion, or may do it really, really well. It kind of depends. Whereas that's what we do. It isn't all we do, because we now do everything else as a secondary. So somebody comes and says, oh, can you help me with my computer? And you go, certainly. And then they tell you that they've got energy debt.
Yeah.
Because people who are excluded from the rest of society often need somewhere to go and just dump their worries and cares. And so our folk sit there and listen to it all. And then if they say, oh, I've got this problem with energy debt, we go, oh, that's okay. We work with Citizens Advice locally. You do energy stuff. Should we make a referral? Would you like us to make a referral? And then they get that help.
Yeah.
So TechResort, as it stands, is like the front door to a whole wide range of things, where it's pretty safe. If you're not looking at your best today, or you're having a bit of a rough time, but you just really need to get your universal credit done, it's a very non-judgmental space, and you'll see everybody in there. But it is also a bit of a gateway to other places, if that's what you need. And some do.
We've got a shop, haven't we? So you might show a picture of our HQ in a minute, so people can see. That was very. It was very deliberate picking that. But you asked about Peter Carr. So just rounding that off. So they were really interested in the hub kind of front door idea. You could see their sort of ears pricking up on the call. It's like, how does this work?
Yeah. And
we go and do a lot of co-located work. The food bank, Eastbourne's got the busiest food bank per head in the country. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
A shock. But it has, there's poverty in coastal towns. Deep-rooted poverty. So we're able to tell them about that, and then we kind of left it with them. So we do a catch up. We're really interested in knowing where that's going. And then obviously those documents that have sort of come out this week, the digital blueprint, it's hard to say, the digital blueprint for government.
Yes.
Kind of mentioned digital inclusion, referenced it. It's not a lot of detail. There's the 10-year-old, over 10-year-old now strategy. Want to kind of see an update of that.
Yeah.
I guess it's all to play for, isn't it?
Yeah. And I know that the all-party parliamentary group on digital inclusion met last week in Manchester, and I think those kind of things were definitely in discussion there. I've seen a few reports, and I think we've included a mention of it in one of the stories that we might get onto later. But yeah, we know that this government has a more progressive, or proactive approach, I think, or looks to be having a more proactive approach to digital inclusion than the previous one, shall we say. So on the screen at the moment, Sweyn has the blueprint for modern digital government, which is the story that I was going to come on to later on, about how Martha Lane Fox has referred to this, and you were talking about it earlier as well, Will. Have you actually had a chance to read the blueprint, and what do you think about it?
I have, and I read the there's like the state of government thing that she did, and then this is the response from the Secretary of State. There's loads of really good stuff in here. It's promising, and interestingly, they merge a lot of departments together, and they call them GDS, which was like a wry smile, because I've worked there. It's like, fine. We looked at other names. This was the best name. It's like, great. But I think the thinking is quite different. It's a more all-encompassing thing from the time I worked there. So I worked on. I was a lowly transition manager. That was my title. I had to encourage departments to get onto GovUK, onto the single domain. But they'd done like a prototype. They'd launched GovUK, so all the main transactions. And Whitehall was the bit that I worked on initially, and it was encouraging departments to get on. And it was very much about single platform at the time. It's like better publishing, better tools, but it's wholly central government. That was the attitude to it then. Not really local. We're interested in assisted digital. There was a lot of big push on that at the time, but it didn't have this all-encompassing thing in the way it seems to now. And I guess the challenge is, how do you do all these things meaningfully? There's a lot going on. If they do all the things that they want to do, that's a ton of stuff that they need to get their heads around and deliver on. And I guess my only thing is that they shouldn't do it on their own.
Yeah.
When I was reading it, I was thinking this is a little bit central government does it to everybody else. It felt a little bit like that, and I thought, I don't think you'll do that, but I really, you've got to be mindful of the sort of GDS effect. There are other players, there are grassroots organisations like ours. There's local government, for that kind of thing. There are a raft of third sector bodies that could help with this. So involve them,
Yeah, or there's not an excess of them though, and I think it'd be good to work in partnership to, like the NCVO and Akivo are working with the government on a civil society covenant now, similar, I think, to the previous compact that existed. And I was talking to Jane Ide about that from Akivo, and she says they've kind of sketched things out, but they haven't gone into the detail. But like obviously in a developing something like that, there are lots of other people that can be connected. So I think we need to be connected to that as well. I was at GovCamp, UK GovCamp not last weekend, the weekend before in London, where I ran a session about libraries, and yeah, there was people there who had never heard of the covenant. So like, government civil society is working on this covenant that is very important to them with government, but parts of government don't know about it yet. So, we always need to be bringing things up to people to say, this kind of exists. So what kind of things, if you were Peter Kyle, Will and Liz, what kind of things would you be prioritizing for the next, say, 12 months? I'm not going to say any further than that.
Liz, do you want to start?
That is a really difficult one. I think, some of the work around resources to help people do digital inclusion with their community are really brilliant, but quite a lot of them don't really solve the problem of quite a lot of people simply can't get online. So the National Data Bank, which is run by the Good Things Foundation, is great if what you want is mobile connectivity for 6 months. And it's brilliant. I wouldn't denigrate it at all, because it's a lifeline for some people, but it isn't actually the solution. So in public housing and stuff like that, you'd kind of want things like broadband to be there with no questions asked.
Yeah.
And also people don't have devices. And I know there's a real problem. Everybody is very uneasy about giving people stuff, because there are connotations around what happens when you give people stuff. But if we don't give some people stuff, they're going to stay offline. And they're the people, they're not the 80-year-old lady who wants to, I don't know, FaceTime her grandson over in Australia. Those people definitely exist. But if government is serious about people transacting essential stuff online, so things like job seekers, or not job seekers, universal credit, it's called now, e-visas, e-driving licenses, all of those things that they're saying, it works much better for us as a government if you do this stuff online. You kind of have to have, but what if you can't? So the presumption is you'll have your driving license on your phone. That's great as long as you've got a phone, and as long as the phone is up to date enough to be considered by the government suitably secure. So you're probably talking about a device no more than 3 years old. But what are you going to do for the people who don't or can't?
I had a interview with Peter Kyle on some news program recently, and I was quite encouraged by the way that he dealt with the questions about that specific thing, about taking people with I'm going to say us. I don't know who I mean by us, but taking people along with these innovations and not foisting them on people
Yeah,
before they're ready to use them.
yeah,
But just being aware of that risk doesn't magically make anything happen. You've got to actually do something.
yes,
So
yeah,
what I don't think I've ever heard anyone in his position in government or a similar kind of high level position. I don't think I've ever actually heard anybody as fully address the issue of people who can't or won't, and the importance of making the thing that you're introducing online be appropriate for various different constituencies, I suppose. And I don't mean political constituencies.
Mm.
Anyway, I thought there was hope there for this round of innovation that might not completely be lost.
Yeah, I think, and Gov watchers will say, no, Will, you wrong. I think Francis Maud might have done. He was the
Okay.
minister that
Yes.
basically brought, well,
Mm.
sort of head of the cabinet office. He
Yeah.
brought Gov UK into being, and I think he talked about it, but I don't remember it as being. You listen to Peter Kyle and you think, do you know what? I think you actually, I think you believe it.
Mm.
I think you are bothered
Yeah.
about this,
Yeah.
Mm.
and it comes across really strongly, and that's very heartening
And
to hear.
bothered not just in a everybody must be online way, but bothered about people are being left out and people are being excluded
Yeah,
and being disadvantaged because they're not online. But also, I think um, maybe the Consumer Duty 2023, where services have to be as good offline as online, that people don't get left out just because they're not online for whatever reason. Because there's still plenty of those, and we come across them every day. I come across them every day in my work. People for whatever reason don't want to be, will never be online. They still deserve services, in the same way, just because it saves government and local government money. But when people are online, doesn't mean the people who aren't online shouldn't, get those services as
yeah,
well.
yeah,
And
yeah,
we need to put, and it seems counterintuitive sometimes, I think, to those of us working in this field. But we know there are people who aren't going to be online, and they still need our help. Um, and also, I have this theory that um, you're not, just because you're not online doesn't mean you're digitally excluded. If you've got a friend or a colleague or a helper, a digital champion of some sort who's going to help you, then you're not necessarily excluded. So
no,
we
it's
need we
true.
need to broaden our definition of, exclusion, and then of course talk about the pipelines of, how people get devices, how they get data, and so on. Because the National Data Bank, as you say, Liz, is great, but it's a sticking plaster,
Yeah,
and yeah, not having broadband available everywhere is the ultimate thing. For me, that would be the priority. I'm
mm,
working with a community centre at the moment who have been desperately trying to get Wi-Fi to people, and we've managed to do something local and small. But I'm also on the back of WM5G and getting them to come out and have a look as well, and they are having a look. Um, so I think there's willingness there
yeah,
that there may not have been before, and that's a great thing to see.
I think that the universal broadband thing, when people, I think it was like the Corbyn manifesto proposed it, and people were saying, "This is really funny. Is this
Yeah,
is this is a joke?" And I was thinking, this is one of the single biggest transformative things that you could ever do,
yeah,
and consider this as a utility that for
yeah,
everyone, and then that would make such a massive difference.
yeah.
And it was sort of pushed to one side as being a bit of a sort of pie in the sky idea, and I think that's such a shame. Actually, I had a couple of things along that line. That this stuff will go into the letter
Mm,
to Peter Kyle. So there's a thing called Gov Wi-Fi. If you go in any government building, you'll be
yeah.
encouraged to sign up to this. And I think the NHS has got one NHS Wi-Fi as well. And I was thinking, what are the practicalities of rolling this out further? So, because like part of the pain point is going into a library and having to get used to their sign up system and their peculiarities of their security. And I wonder if there's a way to make something simpler and more universal for people. And so I don't, I've no idea how that might work, but
Well,
I
I can
think it's a project, right?
Yeah,
They could work
I
it
can
out.
I can speak to the practical use of Gov Wi-Fi because it was on offer at UK GovCamp only a few weeks ago, as I say, at MOJ offices, And, I'm technically adept. I would not say I'm excluded by any means. I have devices coming out my ears. I have knowledge. I have, I've the confidence as well that we haven't talked about yet. The confidence of, being able to try things out. And it took me several, I would say a good 10 minutes, I'd say, to get on it. And, for those of us who are familiar with how to do these things, first of all, I was on an Android device. So the initial instructions were for iOS. And then secondly, once I kind of got onto the page, it kind of kicked me off again for a while. And yeah, so it did. It took me longer than I would have expected or felt was a good user experience to make it happen. So if it's taken me 10 minutes, it's going to take somebody who's not so familiar and who gets afraid when something happens that they're not expecting. They're going to give up. People are going to give up. We
That's
know that
really-
people give up.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because people who are technically competent, no matter whether that's like Super Whiz Kid or like I can get the, I've got
Yeah.
some game, they will probably swear at the thing and know that there's a technical fault.
Yeah.
People who aren't will assume it's them.
Yeah,
We see
absolutely.
this all the time. And every time something goes wrong and somebody assumes it's them, they get more afraid
Yeah.
to do the next one. And this is people of all ages. It particularly happens in vulnerable people, we've noticed. But yeah, this presumption that it must be my fault stops an awful lot of people being comfortable. Where we see people, because a lot of our clients are homeless, they have addiction issues, they're excluded from society in a whole raft of ways, but none of them actually object to doing their universal credit. I mean, a lot of them will do it on a phone, which I can't believe, but it's not that trips them up. Once they've learned how to do it, they're more than happy to do it. It's pretty efficient, to be honest. It's when they get their new SIM card with a new number, and it's not actually very easy to change your universal credit on that, which makes me want to cry, because somebody just didn't design that properly. But it's those things that then keep them offline for a bit, because they can't unravel that knotty problem that would have made you and I just get really cross at it and go, oh, for goodness sake, get on with it. And they can't do that. They don't have the capacity. I don't mean the mental capacity, I mean like the headspace to deal with all that, as well as everything that's going on in their lives.
This is in the letter as well. Sorry,
Okay,
Pauline, you
good.
go, and then I'll go.
No, I was going to say, one of the things that Freddie Queck, I'm sure you know, who does the Joining the Dots work with the British Computer Society, has in his framework for digital inclusion is the motivation and confidence. And how do we give that to people? Because that's a universal lack as well, a lack of aspiration, and you can't buy that. You can't. Can you teach it? What is it? What were you going to say, Will?
What was it now? What were we talking? Sorry, what were we talking about?
Gov.wi-fi. Gov.wi-fi.
And then I said there's something in the letter. Oh my! I've had a morning this morning, so apologies. The other thing, it'll pop back up in a minute. The other thing I was thinking about with the letter, and this is maybe the sort of capacity building in the sector that we might need. So we're huge fans of Jason Tootin and 100% Digital Leads. So shout out Jason and team if you're listening. And I really like the story. So he was like the first digital inclusion person at Leeds City Council. I think he was doing it part-time. And like slowly over time, he was like able to understand the needs of that city and start making the case to his colleagues, so that pretty much everyone in the city council now understands that digital inclusion is a thing. And they take that into account when they budget, when they make policy, all of those sorts of things. And the same with the third sector, like with them as 100% Digital Leads as a group has been able to build capacity in that place. So one of the things we were going to talk about is how do you help other councils do that? Because councils have got a massive part to play here. So in Eastbourne, where we are, the borough council hasn't got any statutory or is interested in digital inclusion, but it doesn't have a team member that does it.
Mm.
And I think East Sussex had one. That's our other council. We're a two-tier kind of authority. East Sussex had one and now doesn't, Liz. Is that right?
Yeah, that person was a contractor. There, it was only an 18-month contract, and they've moved into the communities directorate. So they're
And
there, but they're
yeah.
not doing digital inclusion per se now.
And I think one big thing they could do is actually say, for one or other authorities, or in this strategic authority, like this in the Devo bill that they're talking about, is funding for a council to have a permanent digital inclusion post. That person that always can get a handle on what's going on, can build like the relationships internally and externally to do this kind of work, not necessarily deliver it, because Leeds doesn't deliver it. They kind of monitor, champion, grow the sector, and there are other people that deliver it on their behalf. In Eastbourne, we largely deliver it, so it's a different kind of relationship. But for somebody who can recognise that's a thing, and then some way for this group of people to get together, like there are. In my day job, I work for something called Open Digital Planning, where we help planning officers. It's an MHCLG team that supports that, facilitates that, and we've grown a big community off the back of that, of planning officers around the country. And I'm doing this work and I'm thinking, where's the digital inclusion supported community? I mean, there are informal networks, there are grassroots networks, but how is that being facilitated nationally? And where's the money? How is government funding these people to do that work? So I think there are different bits of government doing this already, and it's like, how do we learn those lessons and do it better? So there's a bit of the letter about that.
Yeah, good.
Hope he reads it.
I hope so too. Well, at least you can publish it on multiple platforms, and we'll certainly give it a boost here. We were talking earlier, Will, about building motivation and confidence. Was that something that you were going to talk about? You were trying to remember what you were going to say.
There's not a lot about it in the letter. Oh, I know what it was. It's you were talking about how SIM cards trip people up on
Yeah.
essential services. That's what it was. So also in the letter, we want to look at what are the essential services, like you can't do without services that government and central government provide. And let's kick the tires of these. I mean, the biggest services have service assessments from government. They have big teams running them. So there's some kind of review process, but I'm not sure if it's thorough enough. I don't think they've ever been given the time or the money to really kick the tires of these things. I mean, Liz, you and I talk about settled status, don't we?
That's where our digital inclusion journey started.
Oh yeah.
Because we've got a very large European citizen community very close to where we work now, and we worked in that area before, and we knew quite a lot of them were a little bit older. They weren't necessarily professionals, and we knew they may not have the right devices, because you have to have a mobile device.
Yeah.
So we decided we had a little bit of funding from somebody. We thought, well, let's give it a go and see if we can help. We kind of did the TechResort. How hard can it be? So we rented a room, we invited people to come in as a drop-in and to get help. And initially, it was mostly professionals who had iPhones and not Android, because everything was designed for Android. And then bit by bit, other people came in, having heard about us. And it was very clear that not only didn't they have devices, that lots didn't have email addresses and weren't particularly interested. So there's your kind of, I don't want to, but there's quite a lot of people who just didn't really know how to do it.
Yeah.
But by the end, so we went through the pandemic, and at the back end of the pandemic, when we could start meeting people again, the young staff we had who wanted to finish off that piece of work, and they said it had moved from, oh, can I do my my EU settled status? Thank you, goodbye, to, could you help me with my EU settled status? Oh, and whilst I'm here, can you help me make an appointment at my doctor, because now they're doing stuff online?
Yeah.
Or can you help me with my prescription? And that flip was almost overnight post-pandemic, because of that rush to get services online.
Yeah. Just on that settled status thing, if you look at the digital blueprint, it's one of the services that government champions. It says this is a really good example. And I read it and I said, probably yes, in terms of logistics. Like, we all know sort of what happened with Brexit, and it was a scramble to make various systems work. So the fact that they could stand up something like that in short order, that's fine.
Mm.
But like, what about the people who couldn't access it?
Yeah.
And where's the thought about that? I think, Liz, you said there's one of the words in there is sibling. It's in the
Yes.
application form,
It's
which
one of the
doesn't have a
optional security questions. But
Yeah,
if you're from certain European countries, sibling has no meaning. Apparently, if you're French, it has no meaning at all. When I spoke to a French lady, she just went, "What?" If you're German, Geschwister is the equivalent of sibling. But we now know that there, between lots of languages, there's not a lot of commonality, and we've got a tendency to use very, very English words that are very specifically formal English words in government documents. And they're not the ones that you learn at evening class when you go and study English in order to do your whatever it is.
One of my favorite examples of that is on ferries. There's a safety announcement, and it always says, in the event of an emergency, passengers should gather at the muster stations. And blah, then they go blah
What's
blah blah.
that?
Adults are parents are responsible for children. Blah 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 blah. And then after a little while, a few years ago, they started to change, and the announcement became, and in an emergency, passengers should gather to muster at the muster stations. Muster stations are places where passengers should more or less, muster stations are places where passengers should muster in the event of emergency. And they added a definition that was completely, and that just resonates with me there. You know, the words that are in forms are quite often the opposite of plain English.
Yes, we think it is because it's quite nice and short and quite
Yes.
punchy sentences,
Yes.
but that doesn't mean to say it's
No.
understandable if it's your second, third, fourth, 17th language.
Yeah.
So we found that a lot with the EU settled. I think as a technical platform, as a way of getting a thing done with a mobile device, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
The process was something else, but the digital platform, I think they could rightly say that's really good, but it's how the rest of it around of it was organized, because a process for an individual isn't just the digital part. And we got a tendency, whenever we talk about digital inclusion anyway, to be a little bit wavy handy, a little bit kind of in theory and very vague. Whereas if you're a guy on the street who needs to get hold of his housing officer or his mental health key worker, it's not vague, it's not theoretical, it's very, very real for the jobs that you need to get done. And I think in all the stuff, we've got a tendency, I mean, I'm as guilty as the next person, of kind of forgetting the daily grinding impact on a lot of our people. And they're not all old people. Most of our clients, something like 70% of the people we help are in the 35 to 55-ish age band. And it's quite sobering that those are never the people on a poster for digital inclusion. They're never the people we see.
Yeah.
And if we don't sort out them and their abilities and capabilities and confidence in digital systems, we're going to be doing it at the other end for decades yet.
Yeah.
And that's my thing. Every time I talk to our council, so mostly our county council, because they obviously do adult social services and stuff like that, it's please, yes, older people are really, really important, but there's people that you would give us who would gain much more benefit over the rest of their life. And they're actually not the age groups that necessarily the councils think.
Yeah.
I think it might be useful just to, while we're talking about this, to refer to, I'm just looking at Freddie Queck's notes from the digital inclusion APPG on digital inclusion. If I could just read through them and see if that will add to our conversation. So it happened in Manchester last week, and it was the first time actually took place outside the House of Parliament. And in the previous APPG, the Minister, Chris Bryant, gave the UK's government commitment to introducing a national digital inclusion strategy, which was good to hear. And this is all words by Freddie on LinkedIn. And Freddie said it's good to see joining the dots across the political parties, hearing from Ben Spencer, MP, Shadow Minister for DSIT. So Freddie's takeaways were the National Digital Inclusion Framework to address regional needs while maintaining a national vision of digital inclusion. There was talk about apparently about healthcare and digital barriers. Dr. Ben Spencer, MP, Shadow Minister for DCIT, highlighted limited access to GPs due to digital inequities. Third point that Freddie made was digital as the fourth utility. Mayor Andy Burnham emphasised digital connectivity as an essential utility where everybody should be able to get online. Number four, there was talk about economic opportunity and legislative reform. Helen Milner from Good Things Foundation said fixing the digital divide can bring 13 billion to the UK economy and treasurer. And Elsie Blundell, MP, advocated for revisiting legislation for universal access and reforming social tariffs. There are 9 points altogether. So number 5 was digital literacy and data sharing. Paul McKean of JISC highlighted the challenge of technological literacy, while Raj Mack of Birmingham City Council mentioned the barriers of fragmented data sharing systems. There was talk about connectivity challenges. Black spots in connectivity persist and require legislative and regulatory attention for equitable access. Public trust and messaging. Fatima Khan Shah from Sheffield City Council emphasised that trust in the messenger, not just the message, is critical to driving digital inclusion efforts, and that reflects our conversation about the people people in councils, for example, Jason at Leeds, he knows the city. People know him, so they trust him, and that trust is very important. Number 8 of these points are preventative approaches, need for policies focusing on preventative solutions such as data banks and partnerships to address poverty premiums and online access disparities. And Freddie's last point was new kid on the block. He highlighted that we need to pay attention to the role of AI and avoid having to champion an AI inclusion agenda. So that must be part of it. He finishes off by saying digital inclusion must be integrated into all policies designed from the outside in, involving bottom-up understanding and treated as a national priority with a national vision supported by regional efforts and joining the dots with everyone. The organizer, in the words of the organizer, Bina, Freddie says, the openness to think beyond ourselves, share learnings and collaborate, bringing local experience and that of community organisations and sectors to the table has been energising. So from a point of view of those of us who are um, involved in the ecosystem, that sounds very hopeful. I wasn't able to be at the meeting myself, but I know others who were there, including Raj from Birmingham, which is my local authority. I mean, does that fill you guys with hope?
I think it's what are the practicalities of this? It's like, how do we go from here to the next step?
Yeah.
And I think there's some really interesting stuff in the Devo bill when it finally kind of makes it. So, who's really good at this and who's joined this up? It is people like Greater Manchester, the GMCA, and the West Yorkshire Authority. And Jason talks a lot about how I forgot the name of the mayor, the lady who was on Coronation Street. What's her name? The mayor of West Yorkshire. It's just slipped my mind. But how brilliant she is in this regard, and how you've got champions like that are very senior and really well known that can kind of bring something to this.
Yeah.
I think they've got to think about that when they roll this stuff out. But also, doing very practical things like what are the top government transactions, and like how do we audit those, and how do we do better?
Yeah. Well, they're talking about this digital wallet now. What do you think that's gonna? How do you think that's gonna? How are people going to feel about that? Have they decided based on user research what people need, or is it just what they want people to have?
It sounds very much like the latter to me.
Yeah.
And as I say, I, as a geek from a young age, I like the fact that stuff's not digital, but I also know that I'm not necessarily typical. And I do worry. The e-visas has been another thing that was very much like EU settled, that there were procedural problems with it. I don't think the platform was bad, but if they only ever think in terms of the digital bit of the solution without looking at the wider bit, then that's where we really run into trouble, where people won't accept it, and there'll be more people going, no, I'm not doing that.
And I remember when in the assisted digital strategy in Gov UK sort of way back when, it's like all big transactions, I can't remember exactly how they class big exactly, had to have an assisted digital component. And I think some still do, but it's not enough. It's really not enough. And I mean, when I saw the wallet, I thought, oh, another thing I can have on my phone, great. And like for people who like stuff on my phone, on phones, and don't like talking to people, I was thinking that's ideal for me. That's great for me. But what about people who don't have that?
Mm.
And I think it's, the rush will be, let's generate more growth, let's generate more GDP, let's do those things, let's cut costs in that particular department, but not what's the alternative for people who really don't have this. And talking to digital people, they almost never talk about non-digital.
No, yeah,
Yeah.
They
yeah,
need to.
absolutely. What do you think about there's a project in Birmingham called Recognition Circular. It's a company that refurbishes devices. So they do a number of things. They refurbish devices and they then sell them or release them to people who need them in the community. So they're providing employment and training opportunities for young people mostly to learn how to take apart a device and put it back together again and kind of hack things. And they're providing this device lending as a service to community organizations. I mean that obviously addresses several different things, including e-waste issues. Is that something that you would like to see developing, around the country, or do because lots of people want to buy new devices.
Yep.
What's your feelings about refurbishment?
We already do it. We have a
Mm.
refurbishment program that we use partly as a work experience thing for young people, especially those who struggle in kind of shops and care homes. So they're quite often neurodiverse. So they quite like tinkering with stuff when nobody necessarily is going to talk to them. So we do quite a lot of that, but getting the devices is really hard. There's a lot of data governance that people have problems with. I mean, I've lost the number of times where I said, just take the hard disk out and give me the laptop, it'll be fine. But big companies are very wary of doing it, no matter what. The other thing is that our local authority sells their kit back to their supplier and gets a revenue stream. And so we need Point Bank to do anything about that, which is sad. I think the more than we do, the better. The switch to Windows 11 is going to be
that's going to be a big one.
So we're switching to Chrome OS Flex, where
I've seen that.
Windows 11. It's a bit of a faff to get it on, but it works. And actually, a lot of digitally excluded people really like Chrome because there's less to worry about on it, and everything's all in one place. So that we're quite big fans, but I think the more we do it and make it easy for organizations like ours to use it, and your place in Birmingham, the idea that it's not just about doing the device, because it will never be financially worthwhile because it's really expensive to do it, but to use it for other purposes in our case. And your
how
case,
do you square the circle in that way? Like you're using it for something else. Like I think we set out to say this is going to be a work experience thing for young people, but we found a lot of young people that really took to it. And we were able to, it generates, what does it generate? It generates more phones. It generates more confidence. It gives young people more skills, more things to do. Funders really like it, which we were quite surprised about. It's like you're helping young people do a thing, and like, yeah, actually. And I think there's lots of creative ways that we can find our way through this.
I'll tell you, the other thing is that it's not just that they like doing the making the phone usable again or making the laptop usable again. They actually like the fact that they're contributing to their community. Because often people see them as they're young people, and often young neurodiverse people tend to see them as recipients of services. And what they're saying is, well, yeah, I'll come in here and I can do this thing, but actually I'm not just a passive recipient of a service. I'm playing my part in the community too. And that's really brilliant to see.
Guys, we're coming towards the end of the show, unfortunately, because I think we could talk for hours, obviously. The letter sounds brilliant, Will and Liz, and I'm really happy that that's going forward. Can other people be signatories to it, or what's the arrangement to kind of be part of it?
I think it'll be published like as a news article, I guess, on the Digital Inclusion Kit site. And I think we'd be really happy to circulate it. We could say this is a draft to begin with. The people could add to it possibly. And I mean, what we don't want to do is be in draft letter writing mode forever.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, we actually do want to put it in an envelope and send it to him, like metaphorically. So
Mhm.
I think we'll have some way of sharing it, maybe through this show. You can mention it in a month's time or whatever, and then let's get some conversation around it.
That'd be great.
It might lead. We did talk at Charity Camp about having some national digital inclusion event, which we're super keen to do with others, because
Excellent.
you know we got so much out of Charity Camp, but that's just a small part of what happened on the day. It's like, what could we do if we had a whole day?
Yeah.
You know, somewhere central in the country to talk about this stuff. What could we do with that?
Brilliant.
So
Yeah.
let's
Great.
do some more thinking about that one.
Absolutely. Thanks very much for joining us today. It's been fascinating, and as I say, I think we could talk for the rest of the day about, and the week even, about all this stuff, and sort everything out, obviously, between us. How do people get in touch with you after the show if they wish to do so? What's the best way?
techresort.org, excuse me, techresort.org. You can drop on the site. There's a contact form, or hello@techresort.org is the email. And we're on
Okay.
all good social media near you, so not Twitter, Blue Sky, LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Please look us up.
And there's a link to your website, and also a whole pile of other things that we've mentioned on the description to this YouTube video. So you should be able to find it there.
Excellent. So thanks again for joining us. Thanks everybody for listening and watching today and the days to come. Hope you have a great week and see you soon. Bye.
Thanks very much.